did you develop that ability to understand multiple different businesses and to be able to guide business leaders through that journey of growth?
Business is not complicated. It's a big ass toolbox of best tools and practices. What makes it complicated is the people.
What mindsets did you have to change to be successful?
I'm an emotional extrovert. I'm butting heads with an analytical introvert because it's the way it's supposed to be. Well, let's not judge. Let's just examine what's really going on and better understand each other's intentions and end up with a better thing.
What is something that you do, John, every day that builds your habits that has really driven your success?
I'm a list guy. Having the ability to prioritize, make sure that you're getting the right things done when they need to.
Diverse thinking to the podcast from a generational aspect.
Change doesn't have to be overwhelming. Once you've made change, your mind knows how to make change.
At any stage of our lives, we are unstoppable.
Welcome back to another episode of Unstoppable, the podcast where we dive deep into the minds of high-achieving leaders, entrepreneurs, and visionaries who refuse to settle for anything less than extraordinary success. I'm your host, Michelle Bonahum, and today we have an incredible guest joining us. On episode 14, we're sitting down with a true expert in leadership development and business strategy, John Palen. John is a strategic business leader, an executive coach at Allied Executives, where he helps CEOs and business owners unlock their full potential with a deep background in leadership development, growth strategies, and executive peer advisory. John specializes in guiding leaders through complex challenges to achieve unstoppable success. His expertise in fostering high-performance cultures and driving business transformation makes him a sought-after mentor for those looking to scale their companies and sharpen their leadership edge. Today, we're going to explore what it takes to lead with impact, make bold decisions, and build organizations that thrive in any market condition. So without further ado, let's dive in. John, welcome to Unstoppable. Can you start out by telling us your story as a successful business owner and leader? How did you get there?
Well, thanks. It's a pleasure to be here. And with that intro, I'm going to be hard to live up to it, Michelle.
Oh, not true. Not true.
Well, I started out in college as a failing student and ended up going back to get my degree as an adult after I dropped out. And I grew up in a family business, so I saw how hard my dad worked and my older family members. I was 5 of 7 kids. By the time I got out of college, my oldest brother was kind of already at the helm of the business. And I worked there for about a year and felt that, well, he's in my seat, so what am I going to do? And decided to, get my degree and then move out. And I went corporate and then eventually saved up enough money and got invested in my first business and just learned and practiced the things of leadership. And through my connections, some investors had hired me to be a CEO of their company, which was a great experience. I was like 33 and had no idea what I was doing, but I could sell myself enough to get them to believe I was their guy. Didn't know how to read a balance sheet or didn't know how to understand even a P&L. But I got the job and they were sophisticated enough that they knew that I couldn't do much damage. But I was nervous because I didn't know what I was doing. So
Awesome.
I just developed the courage and the strength to figure things out as I went. I was exposed to the peer group industry. A mentor had told me about it, and I always wanted to find one to plug in. And I looked at 3 different groups, but never found the right peer group. I felt like my companies were bigger than theirs, and I wanted to be the dumbest guy at the table. So the balance and the makeup of the group wasn't always the right fit.
Uh-huh.
And in one case, the facilitator wanted to get on their soapbox and tell everybody how he thinks it is. And I'm like, I wanted to learn from the other members of the group, not from necessarily the facilitator. So I did long for it, but never found one. And then I continued on with my career. And later on in life, I was at a point where I realized, I really love this peer group concept. I interviewed with every peer group company and facilitator in town. Some wanted to hire me, but I decided I'd just start one from scratch on my own. And that's kind of how Allied formed in the year 2000. Today, we've got a couple hundred members and 20 peer groups. and we got about a
Wow.
dozen in each, and we're just having a blast.
How did you develop that ability to understand multiple different businesses and to be able to guide business leaders through that journey of growth?
The thing I've learned over the years is business is not complicated. It's a big ass
Yeah.
toolbox of best tools and practices. What makes it complicated is the people. When you're in business and you're trying to deal with the complexities, it's not necessarily your industry or the business that you're in. It's the people, the process, or the accountability and controls around really understanding and interpreting what's happening. And then knowing how to respond, plan, react, and navigate through that.
Yeah, that's for sure. I mean, I remember sitting in roundtables, and it seems like when in the roundtables that I'm in, the issue is always the people, right? How do you help to be able to get people to do what's needed and to support them along the way? Do you have any tips for our audience on how to do that, having watched hundreds and hundreds of leaders go through that journey?
Well, I think as a leader, a business owner, there's a few things that are essential. It's not, number one, find some mentors, people who've been there, done that. Hire a coach, get a life coach, a business coach,
Mhm.
just someone to help hold you accountable to, understanding yourself. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? And then a business side of it, get a peer group so that you can learn from what other people are dealing with. Because every time we have an issue or a challenge or a problem, odds are there's others that have gone through it, right? So when you're in a peer group, oftentimes someone might show up in their peer group and they're sitting there listening to this conversation, and someone else is still in their gut saying, yeah, I got this problem. I have no idea what to do about it. But they start explaining it, and everybody around the table is going to say, holy crap, I've dealt with or I'm dealing with the same thing. I just never realized it until I hear this person talking about it. But then in the end result, there's odds are there's people around the table who said, yeah, I went through that about 5 years ago. Here's what I did that didn't work. Here's what I did that worked. Here's what I learned from it. And that conversation then equips us to have more clarity around, okay, well, how can I really better understand that situation and what the considerations are for what kind of clarity or solutions there are to it, and then make the best decision for how to implement, correct, and solve those types of
Yeah.
problems.
Not all of our audience knows what a peer group is. So, can you just talk a little bit about what is a peer group and who is a good fit for a peer group?
Yeah, there are a lot of peer groups in the Twin Cities. They're all really good. And I think the biggest difference of what makes a great peer group experience is who's sitting around the same table together. So we've got a methodology to how we assess an individual, and not only where are they at in their personal journey as a leader. You got beginner, intermediate, advanced type folks out there, and the difference would be, well, I'm brand new. I used to be a sales guy. Now I'm a president. And you got other folks that, I've been a president for 5 years. There's a lot I've learned and a lot I've done, but I know that there's a lot I have yet to do or learn. And then there's those enterprise leaders out there that maybe they're more polished. They have a solid infrastructure. They've got really strong people around them and an independently self-sufficient leadership team. So there's those different dynamics in not only where the individual is on their journey, but also the company. How advanced and sophisticated does the business get organized to plan, execute that plan, and perform on a day-to-day basis? So we kind of assess those two things: the business sophistication, the individual sophistication, and then in that makeup is a methodology that helps us say, okay, which peer group of all of the peer groups are you going to be the best fit with? So you can't have competitors in the same peer group, because you want people to show up willing to be vulnerable, to take the risk to talk about what they are afraid of, what they're struggling with, what they don't understand. And sometimes you get people showing up thinking, well, I'm going to brag about how rich, how smart, and how great I am. And, that's not authentic, and that's not the type of culture we want. So,
Yeah, that's awesome. In our book Unstoppable, we talk about one of the principles for success of being unstoppable as a leader or a company is to have a support network like a peer group to come alongside of you and be able to help hold you accountable, but to also help just encourage and support and sometimes pick you back up when you've fallen down. I know that in my own life, that's why I've cherished the peer groups that I've been in, and that authenticity is so important. Do you have any stories that you can tell about, some success that has come out of leaders being involved in peer groups?
A long time ago, when I was starting out, I had a peer group that had a number of manufacturers in it, and I met a guy who was a prospect, and I had room in the group, and the prospect was very private. So I'm like, "How many employees do you have?" And he'd like hesitate. And what's your revenue? And he'd like hesitate and say, "You know what? The only one who knows what my revenue is me and my CPA who does my taxes." And I'm like, "Well, you sound like a very private person. I get that, but then why do you want a peer group?" And so I challenged him and got him to rethink a little bit about what would be available to him. And he shows up to he finally agreed, okay, I'll come check it out. He came to his first meeting. And at that meeting, the host, who was also a manufacturer, he shared his org chart, his financial statements, his business plan, and he had specific questions. He goes, "You know what? I'm really frustrated because my sales expense keeps going up, my revenue's kind of flat, and I don't know how to change that. I've been struggling for years with this concept." And everyone in the group was, kind of dissecting and slicing and dicing some of the things that he was sharing in his data and trying to break that down. In his case, he had highly compensated sales reps scattered all over the U.S. Country club membership, company car, a high base with a very low commission. And the obvious solution to people around the table, and he couldn't see the forest through the trees, was you're not incenting the results you want. If you want, give them a bigger commission, a lower base, and a bigger commission. Long story short, we found $500,000 to add to his bottom line instantly, help get clarity around how to transform the makeup of his sales department and effort. And that next year was a huge skyrocket of growth, with a much improved margin. So that never would have happened, without the peer group to have that conversation together. And then that new guy at the end of the meeting came up to me and says, "Holy crap, John, I have no problem sharing my financials with these people, and sign me up. When can I host?"
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, we can get stuck inside of ourselves in our companies, right? And so to have that group of people that's kind of giving an outside look with outside experience, that's invaluable.
The thing we hear the most is that, okay, so what someone will say to their peer group after they're, in a hot seat, "Oh, so what you're saying is I'm the problem?" And everyone's going, "Yep." So a lot of times having the feedback that, okay,
Right.
it's the way you're not handling it or the way that you're handling it that isn't working. So,
Yeah.
what does that mean? And how can we rethink things to approach it differently to get a better result?
I'd love to turn the focus of our conversation to your personal journey as a business owner and leader. You said you started a couple businesses early on, and some of our audience, they're young leaders, others are people wanting to come out of corporate and start a business. So talk about your journey of starting a business and what did it take?
So I was aware of the concept of flipping homes. I had this idea, well, I want to flip businesses. So I chose a business that required more technical knowledge than I had. I figured I could hire it. In that case, it was what made it difficult. In 3 years, I sold it at a loss just to get rid of it. But the lesson there was, buying something not only that I feel passionate about being able to turn around and improve, but is it something I really passionately know? Fixing cars was not a passion, was not a skill, was not something that I was really connected to in any way. I was looking at it more for the money. So I think that was partly a mistake. My intent was to build a team that could independently and self-sufficiently run the company for me so that I could focus more on the strategic, bigger things in the company. And, now that I'm, 61 years old, I realize that, a leader's job is not only to learn how to lead other people to become better leaders themselves, get out of the day-to-day, then I could have other people and new hires take those. And then it made it a lot easier as a tool to help assess putting the right people in the right seats around me and then grow the company that way.
Love that, John. A question that I have for you, when you talk about building that team, right? What are some of the things you're looking for? What are some of the things that you're trying to find in your team? What are the things that you're going to instill into your team? And also, how do you find these people when it comes to building your team to get the job done for you?
It was, there's different economic and industry cycles where there was a period where it was really easy to find people because there was a tight job market, and then it was easy to find really good talent. And then you get another cycle to turn where, like during COVID and after the inflation, it was an employees market. Employers couldn't find anybody, and employees could get whatever they wanted. And so it's to understand the cyclical nature of not only your business and the industry, but the state of the economy and our surroundings. And so the cyclical nature of the people do change. You know, I had a mentor tell me early on, John, when you have to hire somebody, hire the best of the best at what you need them to do. If you're looking at, hey, I'm going to take the $80,000 a year manager instead of the $120,000 a manager because I'm going to save the money, it's probably a mistake, because what am I going to sacrifice or lose in experience and expertise when making that decision? And then sometimes, there's sometimes, I need an operations manager and it's probably going to cost 120 grand to hire that person, but I can't afford it in my business right now. So then you just got to gut it out. I believe in planning, and it takes some art and skill to plan well. And I think if you're not experienced with it, you got to hire people out there, consultants that are really expert and good at helping you create a business plan that'll say, okay, there's going to be certain trigger points based on growth and margin growth that'll allow me to make hiring decisions. And where to go find those people, it depends. Oftentimes you're better off getting a recruiter, because if I'm too busy doing other things, I don't have time banging the phone trying to find someone to fill a position. I'd rather pay the 30% fee for a recruiter to spend the time to give me 3 really good candidates that I got to then pick which is the best one for me. But then sometimes people are like, well, I don't want to spend 30 grand on that. Then you got to do it yourself. But finding the people, using the network, there's a lot of tools out there, LinkedIn and other things make finding people easier, or posting positions available, using a network, getting really clear about what you need and articulate, what is the skill set I need, and get that out there to get people attracted to you. But once you get the right people in the right seat, then you really want to foster their leadership development and growth, so that they not only love working for you, but they love working for their company. They love their job and their career, and they see the advancement potential, because then they're going to help recruit the other people. They're going to help identify who's a fit and who's not once, we start growing and adding more people to the mix.
So as you grew, it sounds like you really kind of grew up as a business owner and leader, that you said you didn't know what you're doing at first, but you figured it out as you went. So as you kind of went through the years of being a business owner, what mindsets did you have to change to be successful?
Oh, to get out of my own way. When I was younger, I was cocky, confident. I needed more humility. I think that would allow me to either, I was probably, when I was younger and newer, I was less comfortable accepting my weaknesses or mistakes. And the sooner I matured enough to be okay with that, then my growth started to happen more quickly. And then I was able to help the people around me to identify and be able to grow more that way too. Some people think, well, I'm the CEO, the buck stops with me. I got to be right. I got to know everything. I got to make all the decisions. And that's bullcrap.
I hear that a lot, John, when it comes to getting out of the way, letting your team do what they do best, right? And that's how you're going to succeed. But what we've also heard a lot too is you got to make sure that you give your team guide rails, right? So they kind of stay in the mix of what the plan is and everything. What are some of the guide rails that you always make sure your team follows when you do step out of the way and say, go do your thing?
Knowing what is the conversation that I need to have and who do I need to have it with, and then have those conversations, as difficult, uncomfortable, or awkward as they are. And sometimes I'd have to approach the conversation by saying, I'm not sure what we need to talk about. I do know that there's some tension, discomfort, and awkwardness going on here. I want your help to figure out what that is, the ability to come up with a solution together about what we need to do about it. So it's approaching the right conversations in the right way that'll open up the opportunity to either learn more about what's really going on with that person or that situation, and then involve other people with identifying what is the solution to it.
You talk about hiring the best of the best, which I think is so important, especially if you have critical skill gaps yourself, right? But what about the younger generation of leader? Do you have any advice to business owners on how to engage that generation and how to leverage their skills and abilities as you're growing your company?
It's funny because our parents, our grandparents, their grandparents, forever, every generation has always said that the next generation, they don't have the work ethic, and they all have all this stuff we hear about. But there's like 5 generations in the workforce today, and each one has some very distinct differences. And I see every day in our peer groups people struggling with what that means and how to manage or handle it. It's important to really get to know what those differences are and to have the kind of culture in place that people respect those differences. So in Allied many years ago, we aligned with a profile called the Insights Leadership Discovery Profile. And what reveals to those of us who take that is understanding, well, I'm wired a certain way, you're wired a certain way. And if they're very different from each other, that's probably the reason behind some of the conflicts that we're having, regardless of our age difference, regardless of the generational difference. It's just a matter of knowing that, okay, I'm an emotional extrovert, I'm butting heads with an analytical introvert, and it's because it's the way it's supposed to be. And I can just say, okay, now I get that, and I can accept that, and I can respect and appreciate that you're approaching things differently than me, and I can then work more effectively with you, knowing that that's the way we're supposed to be, and we can be better together with those differences than me being pissed off and frustrated just because you're not thinking like me.
Yeah, yeah, that's so important. And one of the assessment companies we use wrote the original code for eHarmony, and what they found was that if you want a successful marriage or a successful team, you hire your opposite. But we don't know how to do that because we like to hire people who are like ourselves, and then we like to criticize people who are opposite of us. So I think that's so important. And then
Yeah.
the other thing you mentioned about the generations, I hear it often too, is, with from our clients and our peer groups, is that the young generation doesn't have work ethic, but really what it is that they want to have meaning in their work.
Well, what I would say to your audience is that if you're a leader and you are experiencing conflict with someone else or conflict between people that are around you, get really curious about it, and get curious to
Yeah.
the extent where you engage everybody in the conversation about, well, let's not judge, let's just
Yeah.
examine what's behind the conflict. Let's do it to learn what's really going on, and when we discover the real difference, we're probably going to be okay with it
Yeah.
and better understand each other's intentions and end up with a better thing.
You've done a lot of success. And, for me, and this is kind of what I try to, teach down to like my siblings, like my little brother, but a lot of success is built off building little habits, right? And I'm sure that same thing, the little things, right? Doing your chore every day goes into getting your homework done, goes into getting A's, it goes up. I mean, we've even had people say waking up at 5 a.m. is something that they've done to just change their habits and really drive success in their life and their business. What is something that you do, John, every day that builds your habits that has really driven your success?
Well, I'm a list guy, so my organizational process is, I've got the personal list, I got the business list, I got a client list, and that's kind of how I drive things. I got to prioritize right, and some stuff does fall off because I just can't get to everything at once. So it's having the ability to prioritize on a daily basis, make sure that you're getting the right things done when they need to. If I didn't do that, and I started focusing on the wrong things just because it was the next thing on the list and wasn't a priority, then I'm not necessarily being as financially productive or time-wise productive or effective with what I need to get done for other people on my team. So it's having a process, a methodology. Every business needs to have a methodology, a structure, whether it's Traction or EOS or Harvard Business, there's certain things, cadence to how a business runs. So we got to have that for ourselves too. And if we're lacking it, we can't be effective or productive.
Yeah. I have so many nuggets to take away from today. I think the first one I heard is join a peer group, get that outside perspective, get a coach, have somebody in your life to help support you and kind of look outside of your situation. I heard you talk about, I loved when you said business isn't complicated, people are, because that's so true. I mean, the nuts and bolts of business are the same. When we go into companies, it's all the same. It's the people and those relationships that are so important. You talked about, buy something that you're passionate about. I think that's so important to make sure that you're not just doing it for the money, that whatever you're doing in life, whether you're a business owner or a leader, you're passionate about it. And that's the key to engaging our younger generation, right? I loved the fact that you talked a lot about being vulnerable and knowing your gaps, knowing yourself and knowing your gaps, and being willing to then hire people, whether that's employees or consultants or fractional support, to be able to come alongside of that. Because as business owners and leaders, a lot of times we do what we're good at, but we don't do what we're great at, or reserve what we do for what we're great at. And so, wonderful tip. You talked about the fact that the leader's job is to get out of the day to day. And I think that's so important for leaders to hear, because it's easy to get stuck in that. Probably because of what I just said, we can do it. We're good at it. And then finally, the last takeaway was get out of your own way and be humble. I think that's such a testament to who I know you to be, John. And I've been grateful that you've been along my business owner journey for the last 15 years. And I know you have helped a lot of other business leaders. So thank you for being on our podcast. And if you're listening to this podcast, I encourage you to reach out to John, because he's a wealth of knowledge as both a business owner and a coach. So John, if our audience wants to learn more about Allied Executives or join a peer group or find a coach, how do they reach you?
JP Palen at alliedexecutives.com. Our website is ALLIEDEXECUTIVES, alliedexecutives.com. Our contact info is on the website. Happy to help anybody with anything you've got about being a leader, about being in business, and certainly have lots of different peer groups for different types of folks. So
awesome. Any parting words for our guests?
Be humble, be open, be challenged, learn, and then change, grow. Because once we get stuck, then we get stagnant, and then bad things happen from after that.
Thank you.
Thank you, and goodbye, everyone.
Thanks for listening to Unstoppable. If you found this episode valuable, please like, subscribe, and share. At Vision One, we help business owners and leaders navigate critical transitions. Whether you're growing, buying, or selling, or transitioning to the next generation, if you're feeling stuck or need extra support, visit us at visiononeperformance.com to learn how we can help. And don't forget to check out our book, Unstoppable: 7 Simple Steps to Get Unstuck, Make the Big Change, and Unlock Your Potential. It's free on Audible, so you can find the link on our website. Remember, the only limits are the ones you set. Stay unstoppable, and we'll see you next time.